Can someone be possessed by a demon today?
That's it. You need a sound effect for that one, man.
Give me a minute, I'll find one. or okay. So that doesn't work for that. 1 Corinthians 13, I believe that when miraculous ceased, so did the concept of demon possession.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. So this is one of those things that has to do with miracles. All right, so number one, we are not limiting the power of God. God could still do a miracle. And I think the same thing could be applied, if what God allows, if God allows demon possession, then he could. But according to passages like 1 Corinthians 13:10, that's where we see that miracles ceased and even demon possession ceased. And so there's a lot of stuff in the news these days about exorcisms and demon possessions and stuff like that. How do you answer those questions?
I told you I'd find one for you since you said that.
Perfect. So there's a lot of stuff in the news today in the last few years about exorcisms and demon possession and stuff like that. How do you answer those?
One of the things I'd say is that when we saw it exist is when miraculous existed, and we just don't have evidence of it beyond now. What I try and avoid, and some people have tried to, thank you, Jack, Deuteronomy 29:29 on this too. Don't say that demon possession is impossible. I don't see the evidence of it based upon what we have in Scripture. What I would say is based upon Scripture, when it existed is when miraculous did, and we see Jesus having power over it. I get hesitant to try and to use, because some people say that what you actually have in demon possession is actually some of the mental problems that they had. And that it describes somebody that's like a paranoid schizophrenic. I will tell you, I have dealt with people that have unreal strength because they have certain situations. What would you call that?
Split personality
is mental illness okay to call that? I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just, but they're something wrong.
Right.
And their strength is different. Sometimes they don't feel pain. Sometimes they, and I've seen them do some feats that normal people can't do.
Right.
Does that fit some of that about like the breaking of the chains that we see in the Bible? Yeah. And could that be different? Could that be similar? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to be insensitive and say, well, somebody's not right in the head, they're demon possessed. No, that's not what that is.
Well, and I've heard of the idea of dissociative, a personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be where you're talking about, where maybe the brain is in a certain sphere where the body may have more power or whatever. You're talking about that, or adrenaline kicks in or whatever. But the last event that I see that's dealt with is in the sons of Sceva, when they tried to cast that demon out in Acts chapter 19. And of course, God allowed certain things to happen to show his power over those things as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that same thing with, like in Egypt, the wise men there, that theirs became a serpent, but Moses' rod ate theirs. But I look at it this way, and the fact that we can have Christ and God dwell in us if we are abiding in the doctrine of Christ, according to 2 John chapter 9. Mm-hmm. And I think in the same way we can allow the influence of Satan to overtake us if we reject the word, if we hold the truth in unrighteousness, like those in 2 Thessalonians 2 were doing, because it will change us. It'll change our outlook. It'll change our personality if we reject God, and like you said, it would allow us to change ourselves in such a way unrecognizable,
right,
to the way we normally are, and I don't know if that helps, but
it does. There was a passage, and I wish he was watching, because Ben Vick Jr. There's three of them. I'm trying to remember the right one. I always called him Daddy Ben.
Yeah.
we were studying this, and he brought in a passage. I will find it before next week, and it was really good passage, and I can't find it for the life of me.
Well, here's one thing that I like to explain about demon possession. When do you see demon possession take place? When do you see the majority of it take place? You don't really see it in the patriarchal age. You don't see it up through the Mosaical age. And then all of a sudden, you get to the time of Christ.
That's
and
where
there's
we see it.
all this activity all of a sudden. But what is also
Right.
taking place during that time? The miraculous. And so it's almost whenever the Son of God comes to earth, it's almost like there's this big shift in the tectonic plates of spirituality. And all of a sudden the demons come out. And what did Jesus say many times about the miracles that he performed? He says that you may know. And that
Right.
goes along with Mark 16:20, that they went about doing these things, confirming the word. It showed the power of Jesus. And so that particular age was specifically to show that power. That it's interesting. I find it very interesting that people in that day and age just thought it was normal. Oh yeah, here's another guy or another woman or child who's demon possessed. It was normal to them. And so Jesus comes along, he shows his power, and then what do you see? The last event that you see, you start seeing them fade out. You
Yeah,
also, at the same time, you see miracles fade out.
And that's why it's often associated that it ended with that. It's put on here, weren't some demons named? And yes, in the great is a great point that we have as far as the ones that were cast out. Michael Laney puts on here being called Legion, and in that name it's named we are many on there. Now, one of the things you have to be careful of is if you start saying demon possession is possible today, you could almost argue that he's taken away free will today.
Yeah, and that's where
When
you
there
get
is
into
no
problem.
hope, and that's problematic. And there's not evidence to say it exists. And the burden of proof would be upon them to prove that it exists today.
Well, I think it goes back to what I was saying about when did you see demon possession? You saw it for Jesus to show his power. The same way we don't have miracles today because we don't need to confirm the word because we have the word written. We don't need to confirm it. Well, we don't need, if you will, we don't need demon possession for Jesus to show his power or any other miraculous power.
Exactly.
And don't forget also, there's also in there, Revelation chapter 20, it talks about Satan being bound. He was loosed for a while, but now he is bound. He is restricted.
Mm-hmm.
You
And
see?
that would actually include that.
Exactly.
So, there's just not evidence of it. And if there's not evidence of it, there can be a denial of saying, because you can get to a point that if you say, well, do ghosts exist? Well, you can't say they don't. Unicorns, we know what they did. We don't see the evidence of them today and cannot prove them. So I'd go as far as saying they don't because we don't have the evidence.
Does that mean no leprechauns either?
Well, if you prove it to me, I'll agree to it. Until then, I'm going to deny it.
And in Ecclesiastes 12:7, when the body goes to dust, the spirit goes back to the Father who returned. And the idea of ghosts is that there are some spirits that still have things to do.
The
so
philosophies and the theories that surround this stuff
Right.
is so absurd sometimes.
Right.
And I'll call it absurd because it is,
Right.
because it's fictional.
Mm-hmm.
Great stories. I love to watch about the zombie apocalypses.
Yeah.
Did I say that? Apocalypse?
Yeah.
It makes great movies.
Right.
Well, man is drawn towards mysticism.
Yeah.
For some reason, man really likes mysticism and things like that. And I think that's where a lot of this comes from is
It is.
it's just leaning towards that. And, hey, listen, you want to play with fire, you're going to get some fire. So
Yeah.
you better be careful what you wish for.